100 FM The Pike. It's Bob and Zip with Worcester's Rock Station and the Rock Radio and FTQ reunion. We have a couple of notable broadcast personalities just entering the studio right now. Kevin Barbary,
man of 1,000 voices,
and Dave Green. And what's interesting about you guys to me, of course, is not my era that you were here. That was when I was ditching Zip and being completely self-centered. Yeah, I was being completely self-centered. But you're legendary to me, Kevin. I'll start with you, especially for your incredible voice talent and difficult personality.
That's why I pretend to be other people. Yeah, my personality is just so difficult to deal with. I have to have others. Yeah.
Tell us a little story about that and how you came into this Worcester Radio stream of consciousness.
So it just so happens I was working for a morning radio station in South Carolina, a rock station. We had the same consultant that consulted for WAAF. At the time, Greg did not have a co-host.
Greg Hill.
He was Greg Hill, the Hill Man. He had just come on in the mornings. He had a producer, and he had a woman that had just left that worked with him, and they were looking for somebody to fill that gap and kind of do comedy and be the sidekick. I hate that word, but it was a sidekick kind of thing. And the consultant recommended me, and then he said, hey, would you like to go try out in Boston? Now, I'd never moved anywhere. I had lived in South Carolina, North Carolina my whole life.
And you have the accent, but it's a soft.
It's a soft. People usually think I'm from California. Yeah. If I get mad, I sound like Larry the Cable Guy. So it's a yo, get out of here. So they had me come up here for 2 weeks and do a show with Greg. And then right after that, they hired me. And this was a month before Cheers aired its final episode. So the first gig I had with Greg was we broadcast live from the final episode.
I was here for that, so we overlapped a week or two. Right?
How about that? Yeah. So we were down at Cheers with Jay Leno and the whole, and that to me was like going from a small town radio, well, not a small town, but a small town to celebrities everywhere and athletes everywhere. And it was a big move. It was a lot of fun, and I was there for 20 years.
What's your favorite voice you've ever done? I know that's a stock question, but I have to know.
Well, there's a difference between a favorite and the ones that people always request.
Morgan Freeman?
I mean, people always request Morgan Freeman, whether it's 1993 or 2023, people always request Morgan Freeman. And then there's Donald Trump. And I got to tell you, a lot of people want to hear Donald Trump. They used to work for I know Mr. WAF. He's a great person. His wife, terrible. He's a great people. And we have a lot of people working for us here. It's going to be just absolutely wonderful.
Charming. And not political, too, which I love. Because if you do Donald Trump and you're political, you're like, half the people are cut off.
Yeah, right down the middle.
Just do the fun reality television show.
Yeah, at least Joe Biden. Listen, people, wear a mask. Come on, America. We need to find some jobs. Kids need to buy cigarettes. Come on. We got the radio. We used to listen to radio under the moonlight. I mean, pizza was a moon cheese moment. But now we got air. You know what I'm saying? Come on.
Tell me how you practice. I want to know this.
Usually riding in the car.
Okay.
I'll listen to somebody. Let's do a video of somebody if I can't get their voice down, and then I'll pick up on some nuance, and go from there. And if I can't get it, sometimes the key to doing a voice, I hear somebody else do it, and I'll pick it up on that. And that's happened a couple of times with people I should have been easy to do, but then I saw somebody else do it, and I'm like, oh, that's how you do it.
So influences are always helpful. Yes. And maybe go a little deeper into the kind of mind you have. I know a couple of voice actors, a couple of really good ones. And you have to be able to think in multiple personalities in a sense. You have to, you're a more empathetic person, maybe, that you sort of feel how these people feel? Give me a little of the deep science behind it.
I guess you could I've never really thought about that. I guess it could be sort of like if you have a template for each person and okay, I need to hit point A, point B, and point C if I'm going to do this impression so that people right away will go, oh, okay, I get it. So like Morgan Freeman is going to be narrating or sounding like he's narrating something. Donald Trump is going to be talking about something without talking about something and mentioning people that don't exist.
And contradicting himself.
That's right. It's a great place, terrible place. And
but so those are the hooks.
It's kind of like a Mad Libs for famous people.
And improv, they teach this kind of stuff. So those are the planned hooks that allow you to improvise. Because people, when you do it, by the way, even people like me go, I have no idea how he's doing this. It's coming out of nowhere.
Yeah.
But it is like playing a musical instrument in a sense.
Yes. It's like playing a musical instrument if you're doing jazz, where you're doing like the jazz improv.
Yeah. What are you doing today? What's your gig now?
So today I actually, as far as voice work and radio oriented stuff, I do a lot of voiceovers from home. I just got hired by a podcast network to start ramping up to fill in for somebody who's retiring from a show they've been doing for 15 years. All they do is they read ghost stories or scary stories. It's like a huge show of some kind.
Yeah, no kidding.
So I'm doing that, and the other show on that network is also almost like live radio plays where somebody narrates a story, but they also have the characters doing the interaction of the voices in the story, and those are both on the same network. One's called Chilling Tales, and the other one's called Scary Stories to Share in the Dark. Outside that, I do just a lot of voice work, video games, and things like that from home. And I'd always write comedy down. I just never have a place to put it.
Isn't
yet.
it great that you're always 10 seconds from the office with no commute?
That is great.
That's the best
That
thing.
is great. And I also work for Amazon, which is a great company. So there you go.
Wait a minute. You drive stuff to my house and deliver
Oh
it?
no! Unfortunately, I'm the one that makes sure the person takes the stuff and puts it where it's supposed to go.
yeah.
That takes it to
Yeah,
you.
you fire and hire those people.
Yeah.
All right. Kevin Barbary, everybody. What an amazing skill. And it's always been a pleasure to see your work and know what you're doing. We also have one of the most valuable kinds of radio players in the studio.
Valuable would be the word.
Yeah, I got to tell you, after 42 years of mornings, what did you say? Swing
A swing guy. I was
a swing guy. I call you guys also utility players because you're ready to step into any role. Dave Breen, by the way. Let's say hi to Dave Breen. And as someone who's just getting an award for a whole bunch of work that everyone else did, I must tell you, I appreciate all the help. Producers and swing people and the people that keep the radio station going. So, Dave, I don't know much of your story.
That's all right.
Tell me.
I will start with this, that, I called you guys in 1985 requesting the Del Fuegos Don't Run Wild. I am still waiting for you to play that song.
We're waiting on your voice to change.
See, and by the way,
Did you guys work together?
That kind of bullying
together.
is what swing guys take really well. And it's comic relief, and they know you're just playing.
Yes.
But
Yeah,
it's
very much so.
It's
Yeah.
very much appreciated.
I started at WAAF in 1996. I was there 19 years, worked through 2015. So I think Kevin and I were talking about it. We were in like 3 or 4 buildings with AAF.
Yeah,
and
3 or 4 different buildings. I was there before Dave, but he was there after me, so he was still there after I had left.
We've seen, pretty much like you guys know, you see everything. You kind of close your eyes and you don't repeat that. Whatever happened there,
You were in Cocaine Realty.
I was not. That was the one building I was. They just moved
Norwich?
to Westboro, so I was in Westboro.
Westboro, Norwich. Not
No,
Norwich.
not
Nope.
Norwich.
Okay.
No,
Oh, they
Westboro,
moved a couple times in Boston, didn't they?
101 Huntington,
Yeah.
and then to Brighton Landing.
Since we have so much WAAF heritage here today, Dave, give me a little of your thought about that legendary radio station.
I joked about when I got in here and I said, I called you guys in 1985, and honest to God, I called you guys in 1985, and I brought that up because that's what we listened to. WAF was the station. I mean, I was born and raised in Norwood. I lived in Hopedale, and I remember being 15 years old. I don't want to age you guys right now, but I was 15 years old in 85. It's too late? I'm sorry. I guess I'll leave now. That's the swing guy. I got to go.
You know what stuck with me, and I've said this before, and it's just the most amazing thing to think about. When they hired me at WAF, our program director at the time said to me, "Listen, you're going to have a great time working here. You'll never win the war, but you'll win little battles."
Sure.
But in the end,
What do you mean by the war? You mean
radio?
Beat
War
the-
and radio. There was a station they just thought couldn't be beat back then, and they said we're never going to win the war, but we'll win a lot of little battles. But you know what? We did win the war. They took that station to a place where they knocked everybody out at the time.
Correct.
That was a rock competitor, and I think that was that still to this day is like good for them.
But
Thinking they would never do it, and they did.
It was great for us too back then because we were that smaller station competing against that big Boston market station, if you will. And I remember they would bring music by, like, hey, you got a new CD coming out, a new album coming out, and they would hide it in a bush, outside the studio because they had to go to Boston to drop off the CD. But then they would call the station and go, okay, if you walk out the third bush on the left, there's a CD hidden in the corner.
That's good.
So you guys have it at the same exact time.
That's a great prize pickup spot. Fantastic. All right. Wow. And I also, so I know a little of this time, because this, after I left in Zip, you really did win. WAAF did win the rock and roll position in Boston and held it for the remainder of a 50-year run, which is just incredible. And it of course, we're going to talk to Mike Shue. We're going to get some more modern history. But as that evolved, what were any key things that had to happen just right, or special moments that made that continue?
It was a lifestyle thing, wasn't it?
I think it was being the one station in town that wasn't playing all classic rock. We broke a lot of alternative and the harder independent rock bands and things like that nobody else was playing, and then we mixed some of the classic in, so we were drawing both audiences together, the younger people and the older people, and they were all like kind of melding there. And when some of those bands became huge, we got the credit for it,
of course. And early on at AAF, by the way, this maybe precedes you, but the button that was created said "crank it up," and AAF always had that edge. It had that edge, not just in its personalities, but in its music. And I think you're right. I think having that edge in Boston, as things probably corporate rocked out in some places, probably helped.
You know what changed when we moved to, I think it was Brighton, and all of a sudden we needed our badge just to go to the bathroom. We couldn't get back in the studio without our badge to scan back. You knew things had changed dramatically at that stage in your career.
Yeah, and I think we were the only station, because we had that rock audience, we were the only station that had more of the edgy jocks at the time and stuff that would never really fly now. But I can't even imagine any of this stuff. We've been canceled.
I've been reminiscing myself being canceled 10 times in the last week.
Yeah, you're all walking around in women's underwear. We probably got you canceled.
Let me tell you something about that song. Maybe the second most popular Twisted Christmas song. And I told Bob this story this morning. When we were putting together Twisted Christmas, I was looking at whether we would get sued, because there was this guy, Weird Al Yankovic, and he would get permissions, from Madonna to do like a surgeon or something, like a sturgeon or whatever. Anyway, and I wanted to use songs that had no known author or were traditional to try and make a Christmas album. Okay. So I was reminiscing earlier today, walking across Worcester Commons to go to the Worcester Public Library, to go into the sheet music section.
Oh, my goodness.
And pull out all these Christmas songs. And I found all of the ones, 12 Paints of Christmas, I found all of the songs that we could do without risking anything. And that was the start of that. When Women's Underwear came out, it was one of the ones I discovered that day. It didn't make it to the second album. When Walking Around in Women's Underwear came out, it was Rush Limbaugh's favorite song.
Oh, boy.
And he played it constantly. And I always thought, well, it must be a unifying song in some way.
So now, how did you cover the I Am Santa Claus?
I Am Santa Claus was with Ozzy's permission, actually. Okay. And by then, by the way, there had been a change in law. There was a Supreme Court ruling that made parody okay if you only took a certain portion of the song and you weren't directly competing with it. So on later albums, we were able to do everything. All right.
Awesome.
Thank you for reminding me of that.
We don't have to take have to take a full commercial break here. We just got to get the ID in. If you want to give the ID,
let's tell people what they're listening to.
Or we could just say WWFX Southbridge Worcester. There, we're all set. We can keep going with the show.
I feel like I need a break.
You need a break?
No, it's funny. There was a time with radio jingles where radio stations would not want you to know that they were licensed to some little city. It might apply a little to WAAF at one point.
Sure.
And I remember we made the jingle. Everything was Boston. And by the way, there was a little resentment amongst some Worcesterites. You remember that?
Absolutely. They did not like that. Why don't you guys acknowledge, we're like your number one town and we're the biggest small town in the state.
Yeah. And of course, business-wise, if you want your radio station to keep doing stuff like Sky Blast and bringing in the Rolling Stones. You want it to be successful. So it was a successful move. But I remember there's a period of time, and many radio stations did this, where they would have a big top of the hour ID like Chuck just did. WAAF, WAAF, Boston. Like the FedEx guy. Yeah. You could barely hear it. But everybody knew. I mean, always a beautiful spot. All right. Shall we invite another guest?
We have Karen Grace.
Oh, my goodness.
Grace. Oh,
Karen Grace. Oh.
We'll go get it.
Go get her. Yeah, it'll take a little time.
So just a thought. This is Bob again. So when we talk about BCN and how much we competed against them when we were there, it's funny when BCN finally folded their tent and AAF was still around, AF's ratings actually went down. And I thought to myself, how could this be? All these rock and rollers who listen, now we should get them. And I always thought, this is my theory, that Peter Pan isn't as cool without Captain Hook. And that competitive hatred that we sometimes had with that radio station and them with us, that it raised the boats higher, the two of us competing with each other, and without one, it was different.
I got to tell you, Charles Laguadera is one of my best Facebook friends, and he, I think he's 82 or something now. I mean, he is still actively engaged with his listeners every day. And still quite left-wing, by the way, just in case you were wondering. But he was like one of my idols growing up here because, not because I want to do the same show he did, but because he was so authentic. And so having great competition, to your point, makes everybody better. All right. Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Kevin.
You're welcome. Thank you.
We're going to bring on our first midday host when we worked here. All right. Karen? Hi. You want some headphones? Sure. Let's visit on the radio.
What do you mean? Hello. Hi.
Wow. Let me give I don't know a lot of Karen Grace history because I didn't know you before we worked together. So tell me a little bit about your origins in radio and how we came together at AAF.
Oh, my gosh. I never thought about
You still have a gorgeous voice, by the way. I'm sorry I interrupted so quickly.
Thank you. I never thought about doing radio ever in my whole entire life. I was in a terrible administrative secretarial job, and I saw an ad to take over to help run the WAAF Volkswagen Beetle campaign.
You started as support, too.
And Steve Stockman was the one that hired me. And so I helped you and Bob, and, just like helped with the drivers, helped get things, the decals on the cars, and was doing all the advertising and the marketing. And it was really interesting and fun because I'd never been in a radio station. And frankly, my background was jazz dance and Broadway tunes. And I was listening to, Wayne Shorter and a lot of... a lot that had to do.
So it was culture shock.
It was complete culture shock.
Yeah.
Then David Bernstein walked into the office one day and he said, "Karen, what do you think about going on the air?" He literally
could hear your voice.
Asked me if I'd like to be a radio jock, and I'm like, well. Most people would be like leaping to the ceiling and stuck there. And I was like, well, I don't really know. I'm not sure I know all that much about rock and roll. I had to basically go back to school for it because, sure, I knew who Led Zeppelin was and I knew the Rolling Stones, but I was no music aficionado of classic rock and roll. That's for darn sure.
And back then, to do middays and to play the tunes, you were expected to actually be into them and talk about them.
Oh, yeah. And I did.
Yeah.
Because I learned fast. I realized that I had a real opportunity, and that's how I learned. And we started out in the Cocaine Realty building, the John Cocaine.
Did you have to learn about cocaine, or did you take?
No,
that was an elective course.
That was a course. Yeah, I was really successful with that, and then kind of like we pushed that one aside.
Yeah.
Good
what a
heavens.
Strange time, though. John Belushi, all of that stuff.
It was just strange. And then I remember, of course, when we moved the building around the corner. Then, of course, I remember the Bob and Zip morning show. That was, the big deal. And I got to come on after Bob and Zip, and I was then I was Karen Grace 10 to 3, like Chuck is doing now, and I was doing the Electric Lunch, and that's when I would take calls from listeners, and I would spin records.
Yeah. Oh, they were on. They were, of course. We weren't CDs yet.
We were on records.
And you hosted Livewire, didn't you?
I
The
did.
public affairs
Yeah.
thing, which I think
did. Yep.
that was a sweet spot for you.
It
too.
was, because I met a lot of really interesting people. I got to do a lot of really interesting things for animals. I got to work for the Jimmy Fund, and I did the Pan Mass Challenge, and then I raised money for Live Aid, and I was able to go to that concert, and I was able to broadcast live from there and bring back audio from that. And I had, and then of course my most famous classic promotion, I guess, was the day that it was National Nudity Day, and I didn't tell the program director. I just said, hey, I guess what? I'm going to give 10 albums and a WAAF T-shirt to the first person that walks into the station
Nude.
with nothing but a bumper sticker on.
Wow.
And sure enough, it took about 40 minutes, and the first guy walked in, and he was covered, and he got his albums.
It was
and a
legal,
T-shirt.
fairly legal.
And we got
Yeah.
a lot of exposure for that.
That's
in
awesome
The Worcester
exposure.
Telegram and Gazette. So there you go.
right.
And then, of course, I remember all your, all the stuff that you did, the parodies, twisted tunes, and we were
Quick
lucky.
second before, because pretty soon we're going to have Harvey Warfield on the phone here.
Get out.
So we will literally have morning, middays, and afternoons, right?
Yes.
Well, actually, and there were other people in those shifts at times. But I remember my Karen Grace memories include lots of live performances, seeing bands that were exploding at the time. Seeing Joan Jett is one night I remember. We all went to Joan Jett.
Yeah.
And I Love Rock and Roll had just come out. Not like now. It's been a little overplayed. But it was one of those songs that when you heard I Love Rock and Roll, you didn't say, that's a new song. You said, that's a monster. And then when you see Joan Jett in her, she still performs amazing, but in her prime doing that, these were cultural events. And this kept happening in Worcester. All the major concerts happen in Worcester because it's in the center of Massachusetts. You can
Right.
draw the most people. Yeah.
Exactly. We saw everybody. And I partied with Joan Jett before she went on live. Now, oh my God. That girl could party. She was amazing.
When you join a group called the Runaways, I mean,
Yeah, you're gone. I mean, there was Stevie Ray Vaughan. Thank God I got to interview him before he passed away. I got to see him drunk. I got to see him sober. And I got to see him twice, and that was an amazing thing. Bob Seger, for heaven's sakes, Ted Nugent, Duango de Tango. That was the first concert I saw as a WAAF DJ, and when Duango de Tango came on with Wayne Nugent, I thought, what the hell have I done? Have I joined the right radio station? Duango de Tango? Hey, man, okay. I mean, there were just, and then, the Stones, of course.
absolutely.
The Stones is the ultimate of all time. So what else can you say? To me, it's crank it up still.
Yeah. Did you drink that night that David Lee Roth came over and made everybody laters? Do you remember what the later was?
No.
There was a bunch of leftover bottles of alcohol, and he just mixed them all together.
Oh, no.
And made everybody a big drink. And he said, this is a later, because once you drink this, later. And,
I'm sure.
and then that happened inside the building. It was just crazy stuff.
Well, that I missed. Because it probably would have been never again.
Well, you had to get up at 9 a.m. So, all right. Karen Grace. Do we have Harvey? Oh, my God. I can't believe it.
Hello.
One of the honors of being on WAAF was that Harvey Warfield was your bookend in the afternoon. One of the coolest voices ever on the radio. Great attitude, fun, and some wonderful catchphrases. And Harvey, I think this may be the first time we talked because we never even saw each other back then.
I think you're absolutely correct.
Yeah.
I have to tell you something. I can't make it tonight. I'm sick. I'm about ready to puke on someone, and I didn't want to do it in public.
sound effects
Yeah.
on the radio are fine, though.
So-
I'm sorry to
It
hear
was
that.
a public service.
Yeah.
No, I'm sicker than a dog. I don't know. Hi, Karen, Grace Karen. The story that I remember with you was the time you interviewed Clarence Clemens, and you had your snow boots on.
Yes.
And they gave you a little bit of height, but when you stood up and he was standing up, it was like the guy almost hit the ceiling. Remember that? Remember
I do.
Your interview with Clarence
I
Clemens?
do remember
Oh.
that, and I remember those boots, and I remember he signed my boots, and
That's
I
what it
wore
was,
them
he
forever,
signed your-
every single day. That's so
That's what
funny.
he did. He signed your boots. Yeah, and that just memory just stands out in my head. But of course, I need to be watched closely. But anyway, but yeah, that was great.
Oh, that
Karen, nice to hear your voice again.
Thank you so much, and yourself as well. I'm sorry that you're ready to puke, but if it
Yeah,
makes
I
you
know.
feel
Well,
any better, my
I-
back is killing me because I just had back surgery, so don't feel bad.
Oh no!
Coming up,
well,
legendary
you're-
broadcasters talk about their current medical issues.
Oh
That's
my
the
God,
next
no,
break.
no, please, let's not. I'll take over the whole show.
Anyway, your malady is worse than mine, but mine is messier.
Oh, yeah, I just hope it doesn't have anything to do with COVID. So there you go.
No. Just speaking of that, okay, yeah, I got like 3 or 4 shots 3 weeks ago. What did I get? I got the current COVID shot, 2023 version. I got a 2023 flu quadrivalent. That's for geezers. Yay! Raising my hand. Right. Another one I got was an RSV shot, also for geezers, and another one for geezers, a Shingrix.
Did he say Jesus or geezers? They sound the same.
Shot,
Yeah.
so you don't get shingles.
Oh,
What
I was
the
just
hell?
going to
And I
ask
have
you
to
about
go
that.
back.
All right.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you about it. And you have to go back for another. I have to go back in December for another shot of Shingrix.
Sure.
Give me a break.
Harvey, are there any creams you'd like to recommend? Because we could get some endorsement deals.
No. Mercifully.
All right, look-
Mercifully, I don't have to apply any creams.
All right, Harvey.
Yay.
I know this is funny because I was like, it'd be hard to talk to Harvey because he's going to steamroll, and I would love to ask you just a few questions about your origin, because when I got to WAAF, you were the big star in the afternoon,
Oh, yeah.
and I got to be the interim. I was the fill-in interim. You're really not good enough. We're really trying hard to find somebody else. That was like 6 months, and then they were like, we can't find anybody else. And so I got the job. But you were just huge afternoon star and with such a cool attitude. Tell me a little bit about your origin, where that enthusiasm for radio came from.
I just didn't know any better. That must be it. I guess. I was at AAF twice, once in 75 for 2 months, and then my second time, 79 to 82, right? And I'm bummed that I'm not going to be at the thing tonight to see people that I used to work with, or the whole deal. It sucks to do that, but I figured it would be better than puking on someone inadvertently. Don't you think?
I think the more we mention that, the happier they'll be that you're not there. That's good.
That's correct.
I just want to say that
How did I get the name Hawk?
your knowledge also of rock and roll and your whole persona was so respected and so loved by the fans because you really did. You really brought it for WAAF.
Well,
you really
I kind of
did.
lived it. Yeah, I kind of lived the job, which, I wore shades. They weren't supposed to be shades. They were just transition lenses that were supposed to get darker in the sun and go back to regular.
Right.
But they never did. And so I was like cool with my sunglasses on. Oh, my God.
And by the way, you had a look, Harvey, that was just a great caricature. And it maybe wasn't a caricature, but it's sort of like, not semi-homeless, but ragged, and courageous with your hair, and it was the kind of thing where a rock star would look like that, and then maybe they'd get home and take off the wig and they'd look like a normal person. I don't know. I'm curious.
Yeah.
Do you still have that
know.
now? What do you look like today?
No. There is a picture on my the Facebook thing. I'm under the name
Okay.
of Bill Hathaway. Look up Bill Hathaway.
Just let us all in. Bill Hathaway, you're getting a friend request. Okay.
Yeah, there you go.
And
right.
that's-
Okay. Anyway,
Yeah.
but no more long hair and everything. It's pure white, and I have a beard and a goatee. So there you are. That's what I look like now. But so I don't look as hip as I did on the radio. But how did I get the name Harvey? I got it not by mistake, but I got it, and I didn't like it in the beginning, and that was at VBF, my first rock radio station. Right. And the program director comes by. He says, "Okay, I've got the name for H because I was H. William Warfield."
Oh, good heavens.
Anyway.
Sounds like
Right?
you're in the
Okay.
Senate, for heaven's sakes.
Well, yeah, it was a news name that I used out in Missouri when I got out of the Air Force. Anyway, so we took the William out, and he said, "I'll play around with the H," because there was another guy on the air, J. William Charles. So J. William Charles and H. William Warfield, what, are they married? What's going on here, you know? That kind of thing. So he comes back to me, and he goes, I've got it. And I said, okay. He said, are you sitting down? And I said, yes. Okay. He goes, Harvey.
Oh,
And
would you
I
just
said,
say Harvey
"Wait a
by
minute."
itself? Yeah.
Yeah, right.
No.
Yeah. I said, Harvey Warfield. Well, no, you can use your last name, Warfield. I said, but Harvey doesn't sound very rock and roll, for God's sake. Jeez. Anyway, so he said, look, use it for a couple of weeks. You don't like, we'll come up with something else.
Sure.
I was
Just like they
so
switched
glad. I was
Darren's on
so
Bewitched
glad
without
he didn't
telling
come
you.
up with something like Hector or something like that. But anyway, so it stuck with me. Anyway,
Yeah.
so that's how I
Harvey,
got the name.
I mean,
Harvey.
with a name like Karen Grace, everybody thinks I worked at a Christian station. Honest to
That's
goodness.
true. And
So
you're
you
right.
can't, you know.
You
and-
were rock and roll, darling. You
yeah,
were
but
rock
it
and
wasn't.
roll.
Yeah, I was, but Karen
I called you
Grace,
Karen full of grace, actually.
Karen Cool. Yeah, they call me Karen. Oh, they call me lots of things.
Okay.
Oh my God,
Harvey, it
but,
is-
but I'm gonna miss seeing everybody like
Yeah.
who, I'm gonna miss seeing. I've got the names written down here: Lorraine LeDuc and Lois Del Chia, Cliff Blake, of course, and Jeff Berlin. Do you,
Here.
Karen? Do you remember what Jeff Berlin's nickname was?
No.
I
The
should.
Baby Blaster. Remember Jeremy was there. Jeremy Savage was there.
Yes.
Right? And
Yes.
Jeremy was the master blaster, and Jeff Berlin was just new into radio, into commercial radio, and so he became the Baby Blaster.
Well, you know what? He has a very boyish look to him, and he's right outside.
He's still
in the
boyish,
lobby,
too,
and he
right?
still
Yeah.
looks.
Yeah.
He still looks like he's 25.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, you say hello to the Baby Blaster from Harvey.
Okay, I
know.
will. I will do that.
Harvey
Oh, my God.
Warfield, trying not to fall in or puke on you tonight.
That's right.
And Harvey,
right.
it's such a pleasure to have you right here. Thank you so much at 100 FM The Pike, Worcester's rock station, rock
My
radio
pleasure.
reunion.
My great reunion, right?
Yes. Ready? Here we go. Two guys that have known each